All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you noted, because of the canceled work session, we have two briefings for you today during our council meeting. And the first will be an update on the American Rescue Plan Act, Homelessness Response System investments, and that will be done by our Homeless Strategy Officer, Dianna Gray. Welcome, Dianna.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Before I get started, I did want to just take a moment to comment on the citizen communication that you heard just an hour or so ago regarding Country Club Creek, about the very concerning conditions there. So staff is aware of it. Last week, Homeless Strategy Division, ACM Hayden Howard, PARD Director McNeely, and the APD district reps met about the site and discussed it. We know that APD and PARD have walked the site with, I believe with that particular neighbor, but with other neighbors potentially as well, and are in the process of developing a plan to address it. And I want you to know that we are continuing to work with a dozen or so departments that touch the many encampments across our city and have asked OPM, the Office of Performance Management, to come in and help us develop a workflow and a protocol for really identifying these sites before they get to this point and this level of concern at the community, so that we can coordinate services ideally in a more orderly and timely fashion. Today, however, we are talking about the spending plan for the American Rescue Plan Act funds around homelessness. When Council approved the ARPA spending framework in June, and set aside a total of $106.7 million for the purposes of addressing homelessness in our community, they asked for a number of additional points of information and report back before we passed a certain threshold of spending. And so today we are here to provide several of those pieces of information to you, including a detailed investment plan related to the overall summit effort, and an update. You asked also for an update on fundraising and governance from the leaders of the summit to address unsheltered homelessness. I understand that has been received today by ACM Hayden Howard, and we will be forwarding that to council member offices in the next day or so. We will also be speaking to some of the community engagement that you have asked us to do around the expenditure and investment of these funds, and then giving a more detailed description or breakdown of how we would like to allocate these funds for various purposes within our homeless response system. At a high level, I think the takeaway here is that in June, we were at about $222 million committed of an overall summit fundraising goal or investment needed of $515. And today, with your commitment, we stand at approximately $400 million. And that we are recommending ARPA spending across a number of categories that will catalyze new services and increase in services across the continuum, but that still leaves room for our private partners to make investments to bring us all the way to scale. So, as a reminder, the summit is a collaborative community-wide plan, a planning process that occurred in March and April of this year. The city is one of the critical partners, but we are just one of the partners at the table there. At the highest level, we can go ahead and move to the next slide, or will this do it for me? Thank you. The summit is intended to rehouse people or stabilize them in housing. So we are looking at rehousing 3,000 people over the course of the 3-year window of the summit, and stabilizing an additional 2,300 households, and through things like prevention or light touch assistance that can help them exit homelessness very quickly after they have entered it. We're adding to our housing capacity. So we projected 1,300 units of affordable housing that is explicitly set aside for people who are exiting homelessness. And then we want to invest in the system to make sure that the work is being done effectively and efficiently. There's approximately $20 million dedicated in the summit investment plan toward that systemic investment. And I should say, for housing capacity on the capital side, that is the largest portion of the summit investment plan at $266 million. That is, of course, $266 million that will serve this community over the next 30 to 40 years life of the units that we create, and that the direct service portion of the budget is $218 million. Next slide. So the graph before you represents both the anticipated investment over the course of the 3 years of the summit and the number of people rehoused. While there's substantial spending across all 3 years, I do want to point out that the blue column, which is the capital, is heaviest in years 1 and 2, because we know that from the time we invest in those bricks and mortar units, it takes a while for them to hit the ground. So that investment is happening in the early 2 years so that we can have those units become operational in years 2 and 3. Also, the number of people housed in a particular year peaks in year 2 and then decreases. We are still in a ramp-up period. The city has made substantial commitment, the county has made substantial commitment, but we are still in that process of getting new dollars out the door. So we will see a gradual increase in year 1, and then really the bulk of folks housed or stabilized will be served in years 2 or 3. So this table represents, sort of distills the summit investment plan overall. It shows both the years in which we would anticipate investing dollars across the different categories, 5 major categories being crisis services, that's shelter, diversion, street outreach, core housing programs, which largely consists of permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, and other services like mental health, employment services, and benefits enrollment. In capital investments, as we just discussed, and in system capacity building. It also lays out correspondingly the number of people served in those core housing programs. In some cases, in terms of the other services, that is something that we will detail as we move forward. It depends a lot on the intensity of services that we elect to invest in within those categories. Council members had asked us to provide a detail of really what are the main interventions that we intend to invest in through this effort. And this slide gives a high-level overview of those services, and particularly in terms of the services that are in the homeless response system, shows a couple of things. One is that the intensity of the services and therefore their cost varies quite significantly. And therefore, the cost per person can vary significantly. People may receive services over the course of multiple years through the effort and past the timeline of the effort, and they may receive multiple services. So as an example, you could have someone who received services in housing, in shelter, and had outreach services delivered to them, but then eventually we would intend for them to move into a permanent housing program that would be shown in this core housing program category. I'm happy to come back to this. I'm going to go through the slides, but if you have specific questions about the different interventions, we're happy to speak to those directly. Again, of the $515 million that makes up the total investment plan for the summit, in June, we had about $222 million that we had identified that was either already committed or that we could confidently anticipate securing through ongoing revenue streams at the state or federal level. As of today, we are looking at $400 million or 78% of the total goal secured or anticipated. And so, you know, at this point, there was actually I believe Mayor mentioned earlier, we had a press conference this morning, Summit leadership announcing that milestone and really launching into, in a robust way, the private fundraising effort that will be needed to secure the balance of the investment needed to fully fund the plan. Of the increase It consists certainly of the city ARPA dollars and a portion of Travis County's $110 million of ARPA funds that they also have committed for this purpose, as well as increases in a number of other, of other funding sources. So when we look at overall the committed and anticipated funds for the summit at this point, of the $400 million, city resources account for just over half of that. The state, actually, there are resources at the state that we think that we can leverage that will provide about another quarter of those funds. Travis County at around 15%. And then the balance from our housing authorities, from private funders, and here where it says service provider, that actually refers to ECHO and the continuum of care, the HUD funds that flow through the continuum of care. Of the city's projected investment, at present with ARPA funds and previously committed funds, we're at around $210 million. Over half of that is federal. The balance is made up of general obligation bonds for affordable housing, of housing trust fund commitments, and then a smaller portion of general funds. One of the things that council asked us to do before we got too far down the road in terms of committing funds from the American Rescue Plan Act was to engage in a community, to carry out a community engagement process, if you will. And so we are currently in the midst of that. We launched a survey on Speak Up Austin on October 11th, and that will be open, I believe, through approximately October 26th. So we will be complete by the end of the month. As of earlier this week, we had about over 200 respondents to that survey. So we're getting good response, and we think that we will continue to draw feedback through the end of the month. And then we've had 2 virtual community meetings in the last week or so and have hosted over 100 citizens to provide us feedback on the preliminary spending plan, and that included advocates, service providers, people with lived expertise. Finally, we approached the Austin Homelessness Advisory Council, which is a council made up of people with lived expertise in homelessness, and carried out a survey with those folks as well. So we will continue to be in the process of synthesizing all of this input, but do want to share with you a few themes that have emerged. We have been hearing an interest in a balanced approach between shelter and permanent housing, and an interest in particular in additional social and health services, so mental health, substance use disorder, employment, and benefits, as well as in crisis services and outreach. And we know that this responds in part based on what we're hearing on concerns about enforcement of the camping ordinances as they have now been fully implemented, and the lack of alternatives, places for folks to go should they face enforcement of that ordinance. So I'll turn now to specifically how we are proposing to allocate the ARPA funds for homelessness. And before I dive into the numbers, I want to share a couple of principles that we utilize to come to this spending framework. First of all, we want to use the ARPA dollars flexibly. We, at the city level and at the level of other government entities, sometimes there are sources of funds that are limited to particular uses. And we also know that we anticipate substantial private investment in this effort. And so if we have private investors that are interested in a particular area, we would have some flexibility to adjust our spending levels over time to accommodate the areas of interest of our private funders. We also do want to catalyze activities in most of the categories envisioned in the summit plan. So we want to get started building out and expanding those services, but we don't anticipate as the city being the sole funder in any of these categories. We think that we've identified funding levels that, that seed those activities, that get us moving, and then that really open the door for other funders to come in and help bring those services to scale. The third piece is that we have endeavored to not use ARPA dollars, which are one-time dollars, for programs that require ongoing funding. In particular, permanent supportive housing, where the program itself is not time limited. And so when someone enters a supportive housing unit and we are funding services, we know that we or another funder needs to sustain that funding over time. And so as we look at the breakdown, you will see that there are no dollars within the ARPA spending framework for homelessness dedicated to PSH, despite that being a big part of the Summit investment plan and of the city's commitment to funding overall. In terms of process, we do anticipate beginning to issue solicitations in some of these categories, but with this amount of money and with the ongoing fundraising process in the community, we will also be maintaining some flexibility. We would anticipate coming back to council quarterly or more often if necessary to update you on the spending plan, such that if, for example, a new funding source emerged for rapid rehousing and the city's dollars were no longer required in the same amount, we would look at readjusting the spending framework to be responsive to the facts on the ground. So there are 5 main areas in the Summit framework and therefore in our proposed framework for allocating the ARPA dollars for homelessness. 3 of those are program expenditures. So crisis services, outreach, diversion, shelter, things that we deliver to people while they are still homeless to either provide shelter or to be connecting them to services. Our core housing programs, which, as I've said, is largely PSH and rapid rehousing. Other services, which is behavioral health services, employment, and benefits enrollment. And then we have 2 other main categories which are not direct service. One is system infrastructure. So building the capacity of our system in a variety of ways so that we know that we are functioning efficiently, effectively, we're getting the job done as well as we can, as efficiently as we can. We are proposing, along with the Summit, a variety of types of funding in that area. And then finally, of course, capital investment, the investment in the bricks and mortar affordable housing units that are so needed in the community. So I'll in the next few slides, give a quick recap of those 5 main categories and then be ready to take what I can imagine will be numerous questions from council members. So in the crisis area, we are proposing that the city dollars be utilized for shelter. This is actually an increase of the $4.2 million that council had already directed staff to invest back in June in shelter or in a response to Prop B. So we're looking at $5 million here, but I do want to note that that was already $4.2 million. $2 million in outreach services, and then we are leaving a flexible category here of $3 million. And the reason for that is that we know that with enforcement of the camping ordinance happening, we want to figure out if we can be agile and find ways to provide those who are most medically or otherwise fragile some place to go, or that we can quickly connect them to services. We know we cannot do that for everyone who is experiencing unsheltered homelessness today, but we want to leave a bit of flexibility here. It could end up being shelter, but there may be other ways that we can approach this challenge that we want to allow for some creativity on the part of our partners. The second category, and really the largest single line item, of this budget is for our core housing programs and in particular rapid rehousing. So this rapid rehousing is case management and rental supports that lasts anywhere from 3 months to 2 years. We are modeling this on an average of about a year of support for folks so that they can get stabilized in housing. And this $45 million does, and all of the line items do include any direction council has already given us on the use of these funds. So just as an example, during the budget process, staff was given direction to set aside at least $6 million of the ARPA funds for the HEAL initiative, and that is part of this $45 million line item. Targeted prevention is prevention dollars that are set aside for people who have already experienced homelessness. So we know they are really at the highest risk of re-entering that system. And then the other line item here are a variety of things that support the rehousing process. Housing navigation, landlord outreach and incentives, furniture, furnishings when people move into units, et cetera. The third category is what we generally call other services, and so these are social services that are critical but aren't necessarily part of those core rehousing programs. $3 million for behavioral health services, $3 million for employment services, and $1 million set aside to help the many people experiencing homelessness who are living with a disability ensure that they're accessing the benefits to which they are entitled. For system capacity building, we have a number of categories here. And we think that this is really important because we are talking about scaling our system very substantially. In order to do that, we are really going to be depending on, to a great deal, both the existing social service providers in our community, and we are going to need to be bringing new providers to the table. And so we want to be intentional, about provider capacity building. That may be training, it may be technical assistance, it may also be working capital to begin to scale up. The other piece here that we know is that, like all sectors, our social service sector is really struggling with recruitment and retention. And so in order to be able to get these resources having the impact we want them to on the street, we intend to invest in provider capacity building. System oversight and performance measure is really about some of the staffing around watching what our metrics tell us, watching the HMIS system, some staffing within the city to move the contracts through, but really a special focus on our homeless management information system, a modest investment in communications, and then explicit investments in equity and innovation. I will tell you that we believe there's probably some crossover between equity and provider capacity building, because one of the ways that we can advance equity within this system is ensuring that we have a provider network that is fully representative of the people who are living homelessness. And so we really do want to be intentional about bringing some new providers into the space, or providers who are new to the formal system or the funded system. And then finally, the innovation line item includes but is not limited to potential investments in technology that will help us do our job more effectively. We could also do some pilot projects with this kind of funding, but we know that there are several ideas out there about how we might utilize technology to make the work more effective and efficient. Finally, the fifth category is capital. And so this is the second largest set aside within the ARPA dollars at $25.5 million. I will say, however, that this includes the $11.4 million of home formula ARPA dollars that go directly to housing and planning for this population in any case. And so that we had already intended to utilize for capital, and then this adds, say, another $13 million or so to the total. Reminding you that, of course, the city has substantial investments in capital outside of the ARPA monies in the form of our general obligation bonds and our housing trust fund. With that, I will pause and answer questions.
Let me begin by saying this is, I think, just great work. I trust that members of the dais recognize the work that the council's been doing for the years that I've been on the council and going back even before that, as Councilmember Tovo has been on the dais. This is the work plans and the operation plans that have been coming to us periodically as we've set them out, that we've seen before, but never seen in the context of actually being able to do it. When we were given the initial numbers, I can remember coming from one of the reports that we adopted almost aspirationally and looking at what it costs per year. I can remember everybody's eyes kind of like rolling back in their head, like, boy, this would be great. This is what it really takes, but how do you ever actually do this? We've tried for years to try to do it in kind of a scaled down version. We've had some really good successes with veterans, with children. We house hundreds of people every year because we know what works, but we've never been able to scale it. And then we have this unique moment in time, I think. Dianna, thank you for pulling this together. I know that this wasn't just your work. I know this was you working with ECHO, working with Homes Not Handcuffs, working with the Justice Coalition, working with the Downtown Austin Alliance, working with the Chamber of Commerce. For the very first time, we have everybody actually pulling in the same direction, supportive of each of their others' priorities. And in doing so, are getting their priorities prioritized. We've never been there before. I want to thank the county for stepping in as significantly as the county has, because this doesn't happen without that. I want to thank HACA, the Housing Authority, and Mike Gerber, one of the first people to really step forward and make a real change in policy and commitment as our Housing Authority moved to say, okay, we'll put our weight behind solving homelessness in this city. We just have never had the alignment that we have right now. It's exciting to see. We've never had the detail, the spend by year, by category that you have laid out. That's real helpful. There's still $100 million to go to be able to actually build out the system that will last. But I tell you, I was real encouraged today that the CEO of St. David's Foundation was at the press conference that the community had this morning, saying that he was fully behind this summit plan and was putting in some of the first dollars from foundations to make sure that we do data comprehensively and collectively, the systems that have been set up in the past, but needed the push to actually make them get to everybody. And I appreciate the county's work to make sure that everybody's participating in the data system. We truly are, I believe, at the cusp of being able to end homelessness in this city. And if we're successful in doing this as planned, if we can raise the last 25%, and I thoroughly expect us to be able to do that, we could be, among the first cities our size to be able to end homelessness. The pictures that we saw at public communications today are heartbreaking pictures. Those pictures were taken recently, which is why it's important, as you point out, the city and folks are going to be dealing with that now. But those pictures are not new in this city. Those pictures could have been taken 8 years ago and 10 years ago in our city. Most people just didn't see it. If we don't solve the problem while it's in our woods and on our streams, it's going to explode to everywhere, as it has in LA and San Francisco and Portland. And when it gets to that scale and to that challenge, it is too big to reasonably expect to be able to handle. I don't know what you do in those cities, and I and I wish them the best dealing with the challenges that they have facing. But shame on us if we let ourselves fall there. I like that you're building off of the programs that the council's already started. I like that this expands the HEAL effort that Councilmember Kitchen brought to us and that we've adopted, that has already begun to get people out of tents and campsites and into tracks to be housed. This is just a proud moment, because this is so much more than, you're presenting it to us and you're letting us know what the city's piece of this is. But this is so much more than that. This is the community saying, this really is our priority, and we're going to put the resources against it to fix it. And Dianna, it does not go unnoticed that within that group in the community, you are one of the most significant voices of expertise and experience and talent in this. And thank you for joining with everyone else to make this happen. And one last plug, we still have over $100 million to raise, and everybody in this community is invited to be part of this. So thank you. Anybody else want to say anything? Any questions? Kathy? Councilmember Tobel.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so very much. This is really just exactly what I hoped we would have come back to us, and I know it was an extraordinary amount of information to pull together. And I think the mayor said it really well. You know, we have, our council passed an action plan several years ago, and so we know we need to invest across the spectrum, but I think your spending plan really lays out very clearly where those investments need to go to really achieve the goal of housing an additional 3,000 people a year. And so thank you for laying it out so clearly. What I wanted to just verify a couple understandings. As I look at the plan, as I look at your information, and I know you've shared some additional levels of detail in our individual meetings as well, this clearly tells us what the goal is that came out of the summit, where our funding has been committed already from either city or the historic investment that the county has made, as well as our other funding. And then it shows where the gap is between the funds that are already committed and what we need to really achieve those goals. And so I think that, again, that to me really lays it out clearly that if we want to see the true potential of our prevention services, for example, we're going to need to see some additional fundraising come forward from our private sector, same in almost every category, including mental health and other resources. Can you give us some examples? There are a couple of categories that I think are really important that I just wanted to ask you to provide some examples of. For example, under crises services, there's a to be determined, under outreach. What kind of outreach should we anticipate coming forward as contracts to council? Would that be additional funding for the homelessness outreach street team? Would it be for other kinds of outreach? That's one where I'd like to see detail, just some examples from you. And then I have a couple other categories like that, just to help our community visualize where we're investing these federal dollars, in what kind of programs they can expect to see increased investment. And most of those have corresponding wishes for the private sector. And so just to help people know where we're looking for some of those private dollars to go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember. You mentioned outreach services. As you know, the city's primary tool for outreach services has historically been the Homeless Outreach Street Team, which is a multidisciplinary team, including APD officers, members of the Downtown Austin Community Court, social workers, integral care, and community health paramedics. And they're a fantastic team, but their geographic coverage is limited, and their bandwidth is limited. And we also in the community have a lot of volunteers working in encampments, meeting basic needs, building relationships, et cetera. But as a community, we have not really had a very integrated system of outreach. And so ECHO has been working in particular with those grassroots organizations to determine how they can formalize that work and strengthen it We think that that will be something that grows through this effort. So I would actually anticipate that the city's money could do both things. We might look at expanding host and potentially looking at their coverage area because they get a lot of demands even outside of their formal boundaries. We catalyze this work in the community that is carried out by other organizations as well. Those folks are not only going out and meeting basic needs, but they are also often the groups that will do coordinated assessment for people to make sure they are in the system. That has been a real gap recently that some of you have heard. As we have seen more enforcement, there's been concern on the part of some of our community providers that people are moving around and they're not connected to services. When they move, we might not know where they're going. So we want to make sure that we track them, whether that's with giving folks phones, et cetera, that we maintain those relationships, know where they are when they do come up on the housing list, and really the process of helping them get into housing once they're prioritized. How can we help them get all their documents together, et cetera, make sure that they make it through that process and in fact into a unit. So as another category.
I have a couple other categories that I wanted to
Great.
ask you. And then I know there are other questions, and then I have some additional follow-up questions about a different area. Could you address some examples of targeted prevention and other within core housing, and then also capital investment?
Yes.
Those are the ones that popped out at me, either because they are, rapid rehousing is our largest expenditure proposed under our federal dollars, and to me that is pretty, we talk about that all the time, so I have a really clear understanding of what that is. But the ones that I think might need some examples: targeted prevention and other under core housing, and then capital investment.
So targeted prevention is a subset of prevention as we might generally think of it for emergency rental assistance. So we have the rent program that of course has been very successful in our community through the course of the pandemic for people who are experiencing a crisis due to the changes in their income or their situation related to the pandemic. Within the homeless response system, however, we actually want to get really, really focused on those individuals who we know have been in the homeless system before, because it can be very difficult in general rental assistance to know who's going to move in with family, who is going to experience a crisis, but we don't necessarily know who will end up on the streets. When we look at folks who have been served before, we know that likelihood increases very significantly. And so we actually had a pilot program with some of the CARES Act dollars last year where Family Elder Care went and did outreach with individuals who had, say, been served in a rapid rehousing program in the previous couple of years and reached out to those households to check in on them. Because of the complexities of the lives of these folks who have been homeless previously, they tend to be less likely to proactively apply, say, to the rent program. The barriers are a little bit higher in terms of paperwork, access to internet, et cetera. And so Family Elder Care was able to identify quite a few households who, in fact, were experiencing serious housing instability and were able to then provide some rental assistance to stabilize them and keep them from coming back into the system. The other category includes housing navigation, landlord outreach and incentives, and move-in supplies. Let me maybe speak to landlord outreach and incentives. We, as you well know, have a very tight rental market. And in that kind of a market, it can be incredibly difficult to find landlords who are willing to rent to tenants whose applicant profile is unconventional and who might not normally be accepted as a tenant. Because if you've been homeless, it's very likely that your credit score, if it exists, is poor. There may have been serious challenges in your rental history, et cetera. And so there is a perceived risk on the part sometimes of landlords. And one of the things that can be effective is creating risk mitigation of some sort for those landlords. So might be double deposits. It might be an actual risk mitigation fund such that if there were losses or damages above a certain amount, the landlord could be made whole. It might allow us to hold units in the market while we get folks into them. And this is really critical because while we are talking about building 1,300 units through this effort, we're talking about rehousing 3,000 people. So we really, really need the partnership of the private market and units in our community. And so this is part of what that investment would go toward.
As I said, I have more questions, but I'll wait till my colleagues have had an opportunity because I know our time is limited. I would ask that as these contracts come forward, that we talk about how to identify them on the agenda so that we can all be really clear about where they fit within this spending plan. I just think that would be really valuable for not just those of us on the dais, but also the community so they can see exactly, this is a contract that responds to prevention services within our homeless, whatever we end up calling it, Finding Home, ATX, or whatever, so that we can kind of track that.
Let's hear for some others. Councilor Kitchen.
Thank you so much for this. I'll echo what the mayor and Councilmember Tovo have said so far. This is exactly the kind of information that I wanted to see coming back to us. It's very succinct and understandable and really shows us the path to truly addressing homelessness in our community. And I want to thank the mayor for his work on pulling together and working with the community to get us to a point where we can see a broad program like this. So a couple of things that I want to point out or just ask you about. There are two things in particular that I think are really critical for what we're seeing in front of us now that are different and new for us as a community. And one of them is the emphasis we've done this in the past, but this model emphasizes and makes public the capacity building that we need. There's a true effort and analysis and look at what it's going to take to build a system that truly allows us or enables us to get towards functional zero homelessness. So could you speak for a moment, just to emphasize again for the public and for all of us, the components of that capacity building? What is it that we think we must do in order to improve upon the system that we have now?
Absolutely. And so within the larger capacity building category, there are a number of line items, and one of those is provider capacity building, and I think that may have been one of the things that you were speaking to. Mm-hmm. And so, really, the vast majority of what the city invests in and the work that gets done in this community gets done through our community partners. We do not have a vast social service department. We depend on those nonprofits who have been working for many, many years in this community, providing fantastic services and getting great results. However, we are asking them to scale up very significantly in a short period of time. And so we know that can be particularly difficult for nonprofit organizations who do not have substantial amounts of working capital, and that is even more difficult for nonprofits who may be more grassroots, more rooted in communities of color, working more at the neighborhood level. And so we need to be intentional about what it will take to help them get there. And that part of that, particularly right now, given what the market looks like, the labor market looks like, will probably be with some focus on recruitment and retention of staff, because they, like so many others, are struggling right now to keep staffed up. And then as we bring staff on board, that there are resources there for the training and of those frontline staff in trauma-informed care, in critical time intervention, in all of the evidence-based practices that we know are so important in terms of delivering quality services.
Thank you. Yes, we talk a lot, and we perhaps think more about the bricks and mortar of housing. And I think it's important to note that we need people social workers, mental health clinicians, people to actually work with the folks living on the streets and help them get to a stability in a permanent housing. So thank you for mentioning that. I also want to highlight the importance of the infrastructure for data analytics. We've got some very exciting work going on with ECHO in our community, our coalition in our community that's responsible for homelessness. And so I've seen some very good work in their dashboard. But the bottom line is, and they could use some assistance, and I know we're looking at that, but the bottom line is we have to be able to measure results. We have to know that what we're doing is actually producing what we're trying to achieve. So, so could you speak to that for a moment in terms of what's available in our system now and what we're doing with these dollars to assist that?
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you mentioned staff as infrastructure in some cases. It brought to mind for me, particularly for smaller organizations who may have not contracted with the city and certainly not received federal funds before, that we have to prepare them for the additional reporting and accountability that comes with that. In terms of our data analytics, our primary source of data about performance within the homeless response system is the Homeless Management Information System, which is a database that is administered by ECHO. And so they have been developing, I think, ever more nuanced sort of dashboards and that help us understand what is happening within the system. But another piece of that is making sure that all of our providers are adequately resourced to input the data into that system, because it is not without time or cost. And so really looking more comprehensively across the system, are we equipping our providers to get that information into the data system, and have we invested in the system adequately to get the reporting out, and not just on an annual basis, but on a regular basis, so that it's a real management tool for our system and we can pinpoint strengths or weaknesses as they're happening.
Yes, thank you. And for the public who may be listening to this presentation, I recommend going to the ECHO website and taking a look at their dashboard. It provides some very comprehensive and interesting information regarding what we're accomplishing to date. And also you can see, additional areas for us to work on. And so I think that has been very, very helpful. And I would like to make certain that the public understands that that's there. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the challenge for us and the additional work to be done is to make sure that all the data gets into that system, so we really understand what we're doing. So the last thing I would just say is what you mentioned before was that that there are dollars in this program to do phase 2 of HEAL, and I'm excited and hopeful that HEAL will continue the success that we've seen to date in terms of connecting groups of people that are living in unsafe areas to housing, and to help them be on the path to permanent housing. So, so I think you said this already, but I'm just going to ask you. So we've got all the dollars we need in this budget to implement phase 2 of HEAL.
Yes, Council Member.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Councilmember Alter.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your staff on greater detail earlier this week or last week, whenever it was. I don't remember these days. So this is really exciting. It's important that the city has stepped up and offered this commitment to funding, and the county as well. An opportunity to talk with some business folks on the chamber trip this weekend, and I hope you're watching. You wanted a plan, here's a plan. Please come and join us in this solution. I do have a couple questions, and if they're a little too nitpicky, just tell me and we can do this offline. One of the things that we hear as a reservation and was noted in your ARPA sort of assumptions or conditions that you put there was that some of these are ongoing expenses and some are one-time. And I wanted to get a better understanding, particularly for category 2, what we're considering ongoing and what we're considering one-time, because I thought that you said we weren't going to put ARPA into ongoing expenses, but most of those as programmatic expenses, I was assuming they would be ongoing. And so at the same time, I understand this is a system we're creating and there's a backlog of folks that we're trying to address earlier on. And so those expenses might be larger earlier on as we set up the system to move them through. So I think it would be helpful to me, and I think it would be helpful as other people try to understand the plan and where these expenses are going, if you could provide some further explanation of why that doesn't mean we have the 90-some million of ongoing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it absolutely is a longer conversation, and I think it's going to be an important part of our work with the council and the budget office over the next 2.5 years. But the fundamental piece that we want to be super careful about is the permanent supportive housing. Because as I said, people are expected to be in that housing long term. Remember that the city is not the only funder of that. For the most part, the city might be funding some portion of the services for those units, but to a large degree, the rental supports would come from someplace else. We do think that during these 3 years, we're going to see essentially a surge in services because we have so many people on the street right now who didn't all just become homeless this year, right? This is an accumulation of unmet need and deep need in the community. And so we're looking to increase these resources. We do think that certainly the steady state probably needs to be higher than it was at baseline, but I think it is going to take some initial analysis as we move people through the system to understand which pieces of this would have to be maintained, or at what level they would have to be maintained to sustain that progress, right, and not backslide. And so that really will be something that I think will vary by line item, by the type of intervention, based on the need that we see of people coming into the system new, but I think is something that would be the subject of ongoing reporting to council.
So in terms of the core housing programs, then we have, I know, for instance, in the last budget, and not the one this year, but the year before, we put 6-point-some million into permanent supportive housing.
Correct.
So that is part of what we're contributing. It's not on the slide with the ARPA money, but then under ARPA, we have the rapid rehousing.
Correct.
And that's where we'd be dealing sort of with this bulge at this point, because it's not the ongoing permanent supportive housing
Right.
services. So we might expect that that's going to be spent and address that particular situation in our system and our flow over time, but not require the same level. There may be
Correct.
there will always be some need for rapid rehousing, but not the same level
That's accurate.
there. Okay. So, and then there was the shelter, we're also saying that was, that's HEAL. Is the HEAL part under the one? in
The HEAL
crisis
part was
or-
actually already budgeted for. There are dollars in our ongoing general
Okay.
fund budget for the Southbridge shelter. Northbridge shelter is time limited, both because we are using ARPA funds for it and because that is a facility that we purchase with general obligation bond funds and intend to and are required to utilize for affordable housing long-term.
Okay, so again, there's this mix across our ARPA funds and our other funds, and there is quite a bit of money that we're already spending on homelessness that helps to take care of some of those ongoing expenses. that we will
Correct.
have.
And I think, as you may recall, APH is scheduled to recompete or resolicit our social service contracts for homelessness for our sort of baseline services this year for the fiscal year 2023. I think that's going to give us an opportunity to look at what we have been getting with baseline, how much we can cover as we learn more about what we believe steady state will need to look like past these 3 years.
Right, and those contracts will be let with the performance metrics that we hired
correct.
somebody to help us to formulate. Okay. I think those are my questions for now. I do think it would be helpful if you could provide, I don't know what the analog to this is, so that we could see which pieces the city across our different funding is covering as part of the city.
So not just the ARPA allocation to these line items, but the other city funding
Yes,
sources.
it would
Yes.
be helpful to have those together so that we had a fuller picture of the city's contributions, which at this point are, over half of the contributions that are being made towards this, which is considerable, and why we need the financial support of the private sector to close the gap.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That makes sense to me, especially in the context of all our social service type contracts are coming up anew next year. So I think that would best position us to make sure we're strategic and focused. Thank you for that, Councilmember Alter. Councilmember Kassar.
I had to step off and get a little caffeine off the diet, so stop me if this already got asked. But I really appreciate the plan and the implementation. It seems responsive to all the different things we asked for when we passed the American Rescue Plan dollars, and we've seen the county's commitment as well. And so we've gotten questions from folks about whether we're able to just start spending these dollars and helping people immediately now that all these steps have been taken, just because there were some requirements and contingencies about whether or not we were waiting on other people's funds. But my understanding from this plan now is that we are going to be moving forward. Nothing is holding us back from going and providing folks the help that they need as quick as we can in accordance with the plan.
That's correct.
That's great. We just obviously see the need still every single day, even when people get moved around. We've been probably each hearing in our own districts that some folks get moved from one place, wind up in another place. Folks have been asking, how are we actually going to solve the problem? And this looks like the plan to do so. So thank you for organizing it, and thanks to everybody that's been making it happen.
Great. Thank you. Diana, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tovo?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to clarify that last point that Councilmember Kassar brought up as well, because we have gotten those questions. But I also want to just emphasize something that I have endeavored to communicate and want you to verify here on the dais in a public setting. So initially, when we made the allocation back in July and said, we will allocate, I forgot now exactly what the number was. I think it was about between 10 and 20 million for immediate use to put to work right away, and then come back to us with a spending plan for how the rest of those ARPA dollars would be spent. It is my understanding from our ongoing communication with your office that you did not reach a point that any projects that you were aware of that required funding were funded, that there is not a list of pending projects that have been held up waiting for us to let you know that the contingency requirements have been met. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, council member. We were not constrained, although we now have projects on the horizon, so we are timely to present this update to you and are excited to move forward with it.
But there were no, again, just to emphasize, there were no projects or initiatives that have been stalled.
That's accurate.
Thank you. And how much, and you were able to invest the other dollars, or those are in process? Where are we, I guess, in terms of the spending that we authorized back in July?
So the primary spending that has happened to date has been $5 million that has been utilized as a portion of hotel acquisition. While we were authorized to spend a larger amount, it included the $11.4 million in home ARPA, which were not actually received at that time. So we have just now, I think, gotten those dollars in, and HPD has a project moving, utilizing those funds. And then I believe we have a couple areas in employment and capacity building, which we will probably wrap into a larger solicitation. So that hasn't been spent yet, but we had spent the maximum of the sort of general homelessness dollars, but did not have anything that was waiting in the wings until we got to this point.
Thank you. And thanks for continuing. I know we've reached out to you, I don't know, multiple times since then, just to make sure that you didn't need additional authorization to hold because projects were waiting. So thank you for that. Again, just to emphasize, I think this really is a great plan moving forward. It helps us all really understand where we're making those investments and was very much needed, I think, as we make this historic investment. So I think the additional information that Councilmember Alter has requested is super useful, and I would ask that at our Public Health Committee, we have a standing item regarding homelessness. That might be a good place to start to talk about how the other city investments factor into these equations throughout the spending plan, and then also how we maybe brainstorm how we want to see this reflected on the agenda so that we can, as a dais and as a public, continue to monitor those contracts as they come forward and really clearly identify, oh, this is part of prevention and whatnot. So maybe we can talk about that at Public Health. Thanks again.
Excellent, thank you. And before I leave, I do want to recognize that, as you said, many folks have worked on this. Folks within the Summit leadership team, Henry Carr is a community volunteer who did a great deal of work developing the model with the Summit partners. And then many of you have met over the course of the last couple of weeks a new staff member with the Homeless Strategy Division team, Neerav Shah, who, without whom I would be a much sadder and less smart person. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Fuentes?
Thank you. And thank you, Diana, for all of your hard work. It was great to meet with you and your team earlier this week to have an in-depth conversation. So I just have a brief question. I know and appreciate that you have hosted 2 community meetings regarding our ARPA funding for reducing homelessness. Can you share a little bit about how those community meetings have gone and any insight that is coming in from the community?
Yeah, I think they're tough, as these meetings often are. When we have unsheltered homelessness. And in the meetings in the last couple of weeks, I would say the sentiment that prevailed was really from folks who do work in the field with our neighbors experiencing homelessness and really distress at the displacement that is happening from encampments without anywhere for folks to go. And I will say that has informed both the Summit investment plan overall, which increased crisis resources by about $15 million, as well as the direction of our city ARPA funding, which includes both some money for shelter and then some of those flexible dollars which will determine whether they're best utilized for shelter or some other crisis intervention, which will not solve the unsheltered issue. We won't shelter everyone, but that will help us in particular when we encounter people who are medically fragile or otherwise, when enforcement happens, that we're able to provide some support.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. I think it's so important to be able to share with the community that the City of Austin is listening and that their input and feedback is helping inform our strategy. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Councilor Renteria?
Thank you, Mayor, and I really want to thank you also. We have been working on homeless issues now for over, and this is personally me, over 35 years. And back then, they were saying giving them a one-way ticket out of town, putting them in jail, which wasn't solving any problem. And we started the House the Homeless program. And we even had a mascot, Homer the Homeless Goose, that would, demonstrate to bring us more resources that we needed here. And it was a long time coming. And I'm really proud for this council and the city to actually do what they're doing now. This is really a historic moment that we really are truly dedicated to addressing the homeless issue. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Ellis?
Thank you. I just wanted to extend my appreciation to you. And thank you for meeting with me and my team yesterday, and Mr. Shaw for being a part of that and answering our questions. It's really helpful to have all this information compiled in one spot, because we know we've had these conversations many times over many months in many different venues. And so I just really appreciate the work of you and your team.
All right, we ready to move on? All right, great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that, let's see,